Hey everyone, welcome back to your Dawn of Autonomy podcast. I'm Dawn Zoldai, your host and the CEO of P3 Tech Consulting. We are at the end of February. Isn't that unbelievable? We have dedicated this month to this theme all about data, thanks to Karasoft, our month sponsor. And when you think about data, you have to start thinking about law enforcement and public safety agencies, drone as first responder, and the fact that what data that drone is collecting is all about evidence. And so what better folks to talk to us this month about that topic than the experts from Flying Lion. We've got Barry Brennan and Steve Katz here, co-founders, vice president, CEO. This is going to be a great show, so hold your hats, everybody. And we're in for a wild ride today. So let's start first, Barry, with you. For those that don't know you, tell them a little bit about yourself.
Hi, my name is Barry Brennan. I founded Flying Lion about 10 years ago. I'm a reserve. I've been volunteering to do police work for about 20 years out of the last 30. I started Flying Lion based on kind of an accident. I was getting an advanced degree. One of the modules was entrepreneurialism. So I decided to come up with the idea of using drones as an inexpensive helicopter alternative for agencies that don't have drones. And it took off. And I'd like to say that it took off like wildfire, but as all entrepreneurs think, you think it's going to be happening tomorrow, but 10 years later, we're right where we should be. And we're helping agencies around the nation and around the world put in their drone as a first responder program.
That's awesome. And by the way, I don't really believe in accidents. I think that everything was meant to be. And I think it's incredible that you were studying entrepreneurship and you came up with this idea that has now blossomed into this global concept of drone as first responder for public safety. Stephen, tell us about yourself.
I started in the industry about 10 years ago, but I came from the commercial side. So, and we merged with Flying Lion. We still have a commercial side of our business, which is not our focus today, but so everything from mapping to inspections to 3D modeling and LiDAR. So we leverage our vast network of pilots that we have on staff to do it, as well as commercial side. So been in the industry a good amount of time, and I'm excited to talk about DFR, drone as first responder.
Well, that is great. And what better marriage could you have than a career reserve, law enforcement professional and someone that's been involved in the drone community and using all those different sensors you mentioned, which as you think about data, I mean, that's what it's all about for drones and especially for our law enforcement brothers and sisters in blue. By the way, everybody, we are live. I just wanted to foot stomp that. So this is a great topic. We've got amazing experts here. So fire away with your questions. Also, just tell us where you're from and give us positive encouragement. We love all of that. So basically, Barry, you talked about being inspired by your advanced degree requirement on entrepreneurship to put something together. You came up with this idea of, hey, maybe drones can either supplement or supplant helicopters for law enforcement. How has Flying Lion, it's been 10 years, as you said, how has Flying Lion evolved over that time from that inception of an idea to what you guys are today?
Yeah, so it actually started out by just me having a conversation with our chief and saying, hey, here's a drone. And I remember when I got the drone out, he looked at it and he's like, great, it's a toy. And then when I put it up at, 400 feet, seeing what you could see with it, especially being a small beach community, we don't have the resources of having airships. So we have to ask for that type of service to come, and it can take it up to an hour and a half if somebody's available to come and service us. So I was really appreciative of his foresight to realize, hey, there's something we're going to do with this. I don't know exactly what it's going to be, but let's try it. And so after about 18 months of beta, we came up with a drone command van that has a 65-inch TV in it, an area where a technician can sit, as well as the pilots operating from the rear. And so we could roll out to any incident within 30 minutes that would be able to get a drone in the air and provide that drone air support. And it became very popular. And within three, 4 months, I had about three, 4 cities that were engaging us in this service. And then it evolved from that to, hey, 30 minutes is too long. Can you teach our officers to tactically deploy from the field? So then we got into the 107 training. That's actually where Stephen and I met. And then getting with the FAA and learning with them. So it just began to evolve. And the ultimate way that I can describe Flying Lion is we find what those pain points are for our customers and we help them solve those. And we jokingly say that, hey, we haven't figured out how to find the money, but at some point, if we can figure out grant writing and things of that nature, we can probably get into that business as well. But that's how it's evolved over those last 10 years.
Well,
Yeah,
that's significant. Go ahead, Stephen, please.
yeah, and one of the interesting things, the mission hasn't changed. That's the really interesting thing. The mission has always been focused on how can we help law enforcement save lives. And the origin of Flying Lion, Barry's not going to say. You want to explain where the name Flying Lion came from, or you want?
Yeah, I want to know. Like, we want to know because
it helps round it out.
Well, a Leo is a law enforcement officer, right? So a Leo is a lion, so Flying Lion. So we're putting.
Oh, I love that. That is. See, I learned something today. That is so cool.
So it's a flying law enforcement officer. And so the mission in the last 10 years hasn't changed. The implementation and what services we offer have definitely changed and evolved, and more built on each other. So that's the interesting origin story, but the mission has remained the same.
Well, I don't know if you gentlemen know this or not about me, but I think you know that I was in the Air Force for almost 25 years, but as a military lawyer. And so part of my role for the majority of my military career was advising law enforcement. Mm-hmm. So whether it was security forces on the base or the Air Force's version of the FBI, which is our Air Force Office of Special Investigations, either me personally or my subordinates were advising law enforcement on all kinds of operations. And this technology, as I was phasing out and ready to retire, was just starting to get a little bit popular. And I remember I was getting those phone calls, and I could tell you more about that, but I won't. But for those that, by the way, we do have folks out there. Once again, we are live. I want to give a shout out to Jeremy Willingham. We just had a call with him yesterday. Mark 43 is listening in today. So if you don't know about them, check them out. And I know everybody else out there too is doing awesome things. So let's pop up that image and talk about, for those that don't really appreciate, what is drone as first responder. So, I just heard, look, it would take an hour and a half for a helicopter to respond. When you first started, it would take about 30 minutes from this command van, if you will, to respond. Now you're down to 30 seconds. I mean, talk to us about what DFR is today for those that don't really appreciate how significant this is for our Leo friends.
Well, so rather than it being a responsive action, it's actually responding to 911 calls as they come in. And in some cases, if they use live 911, you're actually listening to the live audio of the call coming in, and there's a drone position with a pilot in a hot ready state that can take off within seconds of that being decided, let's get to that call. And so depending on where it is in relations to that central location, the drone can be there as quick as 30, but averaging about 60 to 90 seconds. It's getting eyes on. And from that, we can determine if this is truly a law enforcement incident, or do we need fire, or is it a medical emergency, or is it a non-call? There's a lot of value in it being determined that you don't need to put resources to this. And so that's the value of having that drone and that eyes on within that for 60 seconds. And the softwares that are out there that are allowing DFR allow multiple people to have eyes on this situation as well. And so you now have additional resources, dispatchers, command staff, other officers responding that are able to see this exact same image. So people are going into an environment where they know more than what they usually do when they kind of show up and figure it out as they're dealing with all the stress of being directly in the scene.
Well, that's a great segue, really, because I think it was you, Stephen, that said, look, we're all here about saving lives and addressing those problems that law enforcement has. So let's talk about some of those problems, because, Barry, you're alluding to this here, but safety is a critical issue in responding to any incident. But I'd love to hear, Stephen, your perspective on, what pain points, what problems is DFR, and then, of course, Flying Lion implementing DFR solving for the law enforcement community?
Got it. Let's start two sides first. Let's start with, what does DFR do? So it was, it started in Chula Vista, a vision of a command college, somebody named Fritz Reber, brilliant gentleman that came up with this great concept, still's in the industry, which is exciting. Fritz came up with the idea, and then it was implemented by Vern Solly and a bunch of captains after that, Don Redmond and now Captain Fox, and most importantly, it was the chief in Chula, Chief Kennedy, who went and found money to do this. The whole idea of launching a drone very quickly was the concept, and Chula explained it best is that it saves the lives of police officers and it makes it safer for police officers because they can see the situational awareness in real time, right? They're over it. It protects the lives and it makes it safer for the community overall because you're not running in there with sirens going if you don't need sirens and lights and sirens, or code 3 as some people call it. You know, you don't need to do that. And then the really interesting thing is, and we've seen this multiple times and we'll see this in a video example a little later on, is that they actually saves the lives of who's being called for the 911 call, you know, right? The person that's susceptibly, I can't even say the word,
Well, the
doing the
suspect, right?
crime.
So,
The suspect. So it
yeah,
protects the suspects. Thank you.
I mean,
And so it protects the suspects, which is unbelievable, right? When there doesn't need to be force, or if somebody calls 911 just because they didn't like how somebody looks, there's no interaction with the police. A police officer is flying the drone, and we have some good images of that. We'll show in a little bit. But that it saves lives for the whole community and protects police officers' lives and the suspects is unbelievable.
well, it is, and Barry and I have talked before, and Barry, you have a great story about an incident where somebody had called in that that a suspect had a weapon outside of a store or strip mall or something along these lines, and that drone was deployed. Can you tell us a little bit about what they saw finally when they got eyes on that person?
I think the incident you're talking about is somebody called and said there's a homeless person or a person experiencing homelessness that was wielding a bat and threatening people. And so normally that would be a lights and siren response. And so you have officers coming from all parts of the city to this. The drone got on it within 30 seconds and saw that it was a person that they were familiar with that had an umbrella and was not acting irate or in a threatening manner. So they were able to de-escalate that call immediately because one, the officer that was operating the drone knew who the individual was. They weren't acting in a threatening manner and was able to call off the code 3. So everybody that was responding with lights and siren was now able to stop. So again, to Stephen's point, it kept the community safer because we weren't having emergency vehicles running through stoplights and things of that nature at that, the officers themselves, as well as the individual. They knew who it was. They knew the contact there, and they knew that they could bring the person who was most familiar with them to de-escalate that situation. So it was it's a great tool for that purpose.
Yeah, and I think Stephen has another example where that could have been super dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
Super dangerous. Chula Vista's first big success, and one that they promoted heavily, was because it was somebody that was waving a gun around at a taco shop, sitting on a front patio, and he was waving a gun around, and the drones, and so of course police, they responded, but they staged around the corner until they kind of got the situation, waving the gun, and then he lifts up the gun and lights a cigarette. Classic, just a real classic. And they still walked over, but not guns drawn. There's no bullets fired, and everybody was safe. Thank God.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. And there's multiple examples of this. It's
great idea, right? At the taco shop to wave around your lighter that looks like a weapon. Really, really brilliant. But the drone saved that person from their own stupidity, honestly, in that circumstance. Right. So let's talk about the different industries that Flying Lion targets and how it contributes to operations. We've been focusing on law enforcement, but I think we have a slide here with some of your numbers coming up. So let's talk about those.
Yeah, so we have customers across the country, and we're talking to people around the world because drone as first responder is a very new concept, but we have over 36,000 flights. So this includes the flights. We have 4 locations in Chula Vista that are active, Beverly Hills, Santa Monica, Montgomery County. So I can't list them all, but we have lots of rooftops that we're helping. The reason we have people on rooftops right now, and we'll talk about the future in the future, but is because you have to. per FAA standards, right? We still need a human visual observer. We're hopefully going to go to a digital visual observer, but those 36,000 flights are real flights. These are each one, and we're saving a life every flight. About 20,000 of them are beyond line of sight, and it equates to over 10,000 flight hours. It's just big numbers, and those are not DFR overall. These are specific numbers that Flying Lion. These are our numbers that we've been actively involved. Every flight is one of our employees, W-2 employees flying that.
Wow, that's amazing. And by the way, everybody, I've had one of Barry and Steven's colleagues, Tawny Smith, on the show before. I think it was 2 years ago. We'll drop that link if you didn't see that. Tawny explains in great detail that kind of rooftop positioning and how all that works. I've also had Captain Miriam Fox. Yeah, Stephen, I believe you mentioned Captain Fox. Miriam's amazing.
Yep.
She was on the show last year. Again, this is our legacy show, Dawn of Drones. So absolutely check those out. I mean, you hear it directly from Captain Fox's mouth, how Chula Vista created Drone as first responder and how they're executing it in that mission in conjunction with Flying Lion. But you guys are well beyond California at this point. I remember, Barry, I think you said you've been in Norway several times. I mean, this concept and what you're doing has become not only a national phenomenon, but a global one, because people see the value in law enforcement using this incredible tool called a drone to get situational awareness ahead, if possible, ahead of an incident. So tell us a little bit about your reach at this point.
Well, so there's a lot of interest in this in Europe because it's the same concept and it's the same thing. Most agencies globally are experiencing the same problem with people are not getting into this industry. There's not that level of passion that there was several decades ago. And then also a lot of people are retiring. So you kind of have that brain drain. So you have that combination of fewer and newer. And with this technology, because it can be activated relatively easily, and it's a de-escalation tool, it's not a threatening tool, that it becomes a resource that these agencies can take advantage of it. And it's not just police departments, it's fire departments, we're now talking to communities about having community-based drones where the drone can do things for park and recs, it can do things for their engineering teams, their public works. So again, the technology and the idea of and that data, that we're talking about here in February, it's really the ability to get that data as quick as you can and action those items. That's the value for these agencies that are using it from a DFR standpoint, but just communities that are now beginning to engage that. And that's the larger topic that's coming out. And so police work and public safety is probably going to be the 90 percentile usage of those drones within the communities. But then there's other elements within the communities that are doing that cities and forward-thinking leaders are wanting to take advantage of, because it is the future. And the quicker the thing we say is the quicker you get engaged, the quicker you'll start to see these fantastic results.
Yeah, absolutely. And like Stephen said, there's so many flights that are attributable to your operations. But I want to hone in on the DFR in particular and this 36,000 plus flights. And I think we have a slide here to talk about some of the benefits that deploying a drone in those situations for law enforcement in particular are helpful too. So can someone walk us through what we're seeing here?
Stephen, go ahead.
Sure. So there's 4 main uses of drones in law enforcement. So we've been talking about DFR, and that's on the far right, drone as first responder. What we actually have is we have tactical deployment. So tactical deployment is the most common use of the 18,000 police agencies in the United States. Is that we call them trunk drones, or basically police officers have a drone with them as they deploy. Even motor officers or have them in the sidecar saddlebags. And when they get on scene, typically it's search and rescue, checking a roof if a weapon's been thrown, or what there's called a containment, when they have a containment and they're searching for people in backyards. There's no reason for police officers to jump over fences anymore, right? That when the drone can do it for them. The second one is close quarter operations, which is typically SWAT. Indoor drones, there's some terrific US made indoor drones that focus on close quarter operation. Again, very specialty niche, but very important piece of law enforcement. The third one is accident recreation. So this would be like Faro scanner, Leica scanners that are ground based that can recreate a scene down to millimeters. You can also do it with a drone down to centimeters using photogrammetry and kind of mapping tools. And then drone as first responder, which is complementary to all these other ones, but it's basically getting a drone on scene before, before anyone else is on scene.
Man, talking about any one of those could be an entire show onto itself.
Absolutely.
I mean, I remember back in the day, I don't know if you gentlemen recall this. I think this was an FBI op. There was some crazy guy that took some kid into a cave, and a little boy, and I think they flew the drone in there. I mean, so they could actually get. I mean, think about that, a cave, and they were able to see what was happening, and it just really made a difference. And I remember a lot of crazies out there, like hijacked the bus, and I think there was a drone involved in that response. But I mean, the list goes on and on. We could talk all day long about them. Obviously, super, super critical. So I want to talk about that data that these drones collect, regardless of the operation, right? Because having been a prosecutor myself, and actually a defense counsel as well, but having been a prosecutor, what you are collecting is evidence. What the law enforcement folks, when they're filming an incident, and they don't even know, like when they go in, is this thing going to have that evidentiary value? Because Barry, to your point, this could be a complete de-escalation situation where I don't need the video. But when I do need that video, and it might very well get into court, that's when it's critical. So I think we have, there's all kinds of data that serves as evidence when a drone responds. And so tell us a little bit about that. And then I think we have a video to roll that illustrates that.
Yeah, I'm gonna put it into three categories. That there's the video of the flying to and from the incident that is kept just in case there is an incident with the aircraft or there's something secondary to it or you're looking at it. Then there's the evidentiary evidence that you would have, and you would book into evidence as a traditional chain of custody for that evidence. And then lastly would be the video that's retained for a short period of time by agencies or departments to have, that's tied into that first category, that agencies have to develop that policy of what they're going to retain, how they're going to keep it, what they're going to keep it. Because the ACLU's concern is if there's an aggregation of too much data, then you have the ability to go back and check all of that and look into things that, would make people uncomfortable from that investigative standpoint. So most agencies have policies where they only retain the evidence for a very short period of time, and or if it's evidentiary, that it's only kept until it's adjudicated. And then once that's put through, then that evidence gets destroyed, just like typical evidence, or returned, or whatever that policy is. So
yeah, that's, first of all, that's a great summary. And second of all, my memory from like the 2013 timeframe, a bunch of states were throwing out state level laws on drones and targeting law enforcement in particular, what they can and cannot use drones for with regards to gathering information or collecting evidence. And some of those over time spoke to this retention issue, of course, dissemination, who gets to see it, things of this nature. But a lot of it in my brain tracked the intelligence community and Executive Order 12333, which governs, collecting intelligence on U.S. persons and how, that's pretty much clamped down. So anyway, really interesting. Let's roll that video to illustrate some of this.
911, what is the address of your emergency?
1705 Ocean Avenue. I saw a teenager holding a gun in the middle of the street. He was pointing it at a homeless man and then ran away with 3 other kids.
Got one available.
Hey, 141.
Got one will be around in one.
Male Hispanic juvenile pointed a gun at a transient and ran back to the apartment building across from the Lowe's.
The subject has the firearm in his hand, just passed it off to another individual. Correction, they have 2 firearms, just withdrew a magazine from one. Stand by, trying to establish if it's airsoft or not.
2 magazines, correction, 2 firearms.
Looks like there may be 3. There's a chance these are CO2. They ejected one of the magazines and it appeared to be extremely narrow. I'm zooming in on the other one. It looks like it may have a CO2 cartridge. Stand by one. Group is up. They're now moving southbound. I could not establish if those are CO2 or live firearms. Just been joined by another male individual, light blue sweatshirt, total of 5, walking southbound. Group is now approaching a big blue bus.
Walk traffic. You're gonna need northbound Ocean from Pico.
That's all the air. We're going to be making contact, and we're going to have the group at gunpoint.
Contact group at gunpoint. All units emergency traffic 1638.
Hey, watch your crossfire. Watch your crossfire. Hey, somebody stop Ocean, northbound Ocean, please. Somebody stop northbound Ocean from Pico.
Kid to the east, blue backpack. I can't see his left hand. It's down by his side.
Over the dog.
We got compliance from all subjects. Subjects are complying to conduct.
Copy. All subjects are complying.
Wow. So, Stephen, tell us more.
This is 100% goosebumps every time I see this video. Couple key points. One, clearly these juveniles were not being smart, waving guns around, and the person that called 911 perfectly crystal clear, told them where they were. They were up and over. It was pretty close to their launch location. They were up and over them within 30 seconds, 45 seconds, and found them right away, based on the description. A couple things, big goosebump moments. One, this is Santa Monica Police, and this is their, gun lighter moment for Santa Monica Police's. This is similar to what Chula had, just a great classic, and Chula's had many more, and same with Santa Monica, but this one is just such a great documented version. They had a so when the drone officer Sky One announced, hey, I can't see that person's hand, I can't see the person with the blue backpack's hand, he was able to say, save that could have been really risky, right? And so that he called it out. Santa Monica Police didn't pull up on them and them all scatter. You just know it was going to happen if they pulled. They actually had people in the back alley. If you watch it again, go back and watch it. You'll see a car comes down the alley. They had people blocked off the back alley. They stopped the traffic on the street. I mean, they were ridiculous on how they approached so ran off, and this is a perfect example of no injured on any side, and it's total goosebumps.
Yeah, it is, and honestly, what I would say is go back and watch it without sound, because what you'll see then when you're just focusing on your sight and watching this thing is how the drones, basically panning up. You have pans in on the weapons, it pans up and follows them. From a privacy perspective, it's not gathering a bunch of license plates of cars going by, right? And then the next thing you see is like a bunch of guys splat on the ground, and very professionally, as you say, Stephen. The cars coming up, the officer with his canine, coming up, and how, in a way, if you're just watching it and not listening, and you don't have any of the sounds, how peaceful it seems to be. Just really remarkable. So to do these kinds of operations, I imagine, not just for the pilots that you have, for example, up on roofs that are, facilitating these ops, but the police that are now interfacing with your operators, with these suspects in a way that they've never had to do before. Like, that was a perfect illustration of that. So you guys at Flying Lions do a whole bunch of things other than just supporting law enforcement with pilots. Let's talk about some of your other services that you provide, because I imagine training is a really big part of that.
It is. So we've been asked to do a training officers to fly the drones, use the drones, the different techniques that they use the drones that we talked about, the 4 different uses within law enforcement, as well as it's now created this whole new, just like drug recognition experts came out, DUI officers, canine officers. This is a new specialty that is developing because drones are available in this technology, and it's how to be an officer from the sky. And so it changes your mindset, because some of the things that we talk about and we teach to are the exact of what you saw in that Santa Monica case of, get the information, get out, get additional information, help the officers that are arriving with their situational awareness, calling it like a commentator in a game. I hate to kind of use that analogy to it, but the calm voice explaining what's going on helps officers who are responding to that situation, the circumstance, and that takes training. It takes understanding of the camera is going to be positioned differently than an officer that's generally taking cover. And so because of that, we can put the drone in a precarious situation downrange that it's now catching a different angle, but it's the 180-degree angle that an officer can't see. But now they're able to say, hey, I've been able to catch their back. They don't have anything up behind them. They may not have their hands exposed like they showed that one juvenile. Wait till he exposes his hand so we know that he was one of the ones with the gun. He doesn't have a gun in his hand. So now we can move in after we've been able to clear that. Those
that
are the
gets
types
back
of
to that evidence thing, right?
That's
that we
it. Goes
talked
back
about.
to the techniques of how do you want to do this, and what can you do? What shouldn't you do? What's your policy from your department? What are we looking for as this industry grows and develops? That we kind of want to make sure that we're taking the right steps now, rather than have to get to a certain seminal moment where now we've got to go back and say those things that we were doing in the past were incorrect. Let's change those bad practices or bad habits, but rather let's start doing it the right way moving forward is our goal.
So a lot
some of the services.
I was going to say, Stephen, I wanted to ask you about your consulting, because you mentioned beyond visual line of sight. Obviously, Part 107 requires line of sight, which is why you have folks up on rooftop. But the law enforcement has a tactical BV loss waiver opportunity with the FAA. So as part of your consulting with various organizations, do you help walk them through the waiver process, or help them, give them advice on how to set up their program, what policies are a good idea, things of that nature?
Absolutely. So you mentioned tacticals for staying very close within. There's a first responder beyond line of sight also. So part of the consulting is we'll talk to any agency, just no charge, whether it's through one of our partners, Motorola, Axon, Brink. All the partners we have, that, and hopefully down the road more, that we will actually do what we'll call it pre-sales, but we'll do consulting for them that talks through COAs. So what there is called an FR BV loss, where you no longer have to see the drone. So the tip of the spear on beyond line of sight, actually drone deliveries trying to do it stuff, law enforcement actually has gotten some waivers and more of a template sized test to allow us to not see the drone, but as long as we can see 2 miles around the drone with a human. And soon there was one agency, Pearland, Texas, that has gotten a digital visual observer with a drone in a box permission. So they're using iris cameras and other technologies to digitally see the airspace. And so part of the consulting we do is, hey, how can you phase in? Start with a human. How do we move towards a drone in a box, which we're not there yet fully as with the FAA, but that's part of it. We help with implementation. We actually go in, test rooftops, see if there's interference. We actually are there on the roof and help them figure out what there are, because the person flying the drone is a sworn officer that's always in a safe space. And so this is an example of a rooftop RPIC, remote pilot and command. This is Beverly Hills, and shout out to Sam, our model. And this gives you an idea of what they're launching from, a very high point in the city. But a good example, when you're against the blue sky, you see the drone really well. But if you go up against the hillside, you lose the drone. And technically that would be beyond line of sight. But because we have that FRBV loss for public agencies, as long as we can see 2 miles around the drone, the whole city of Beverly Hills can be covered from one rooftop location. It's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool.
We also provide personnel.
Sometimes, depending on, Stephen, I got my drone pilot license and I went up to CSU, and there was hands-on training, and I will admit, they had us flying some white colored drones, and I could not freaking see that thing in the blue sky. Which scared the hell. I mean, we weren't doing things far, right? But man, just human eyes are not awesome. And this idea of, hey, keep it in your visual line of sight. I would think a digital version would actually be better than a human version, to be honest with you. And I think this drone in the box solution that you're talking about, it's going to be a game changer. So I'm super excited to hear that Pearland, Texas has that ability right now and is kind of, forging the way ahead on a safety case for that.
Yeah.
I think that's amazing. So so much going on. We've got a lot to cover, and I knew our time would fly because you guys. So let me ask you this: you talked about this kind of air officer in the sky. You created your own term, right? Air support officer. Now, are those ASOs? Are those your folks? Are they the law enforcement people on the ground? Like who is an ASO?
The ASO is traditionally a sworn police officer with the agency because they have their training, their knowledge, they're able to police, their community. And so that role, as well as their radio communications and working with their police team locally, they're the best to be able to serve that function. And so we have civilian pilots up on the roof. And the real way to break this down is in a traditional airship, you have a pilot who's responsible for the aircraft and for all of the airspace requirements. And then you have a support officer that's now working on the radio, using the sensors, doing the police work of that. And that division is exactly remodeled in this environment where we're able to physically separate the two. So for safety, we put the RPIC on the top of a building. They get to manage and see the airspace the best way possible. The comms to the drone are better because it's above other noise. When you're trying to operate a drone on the ground, you're competing with other noise-making things. So those break it out, as well as now an officer sitting in a computer, with a computer, a large screen, seeing it much better. They're not trying to catch bad guys. I jokingly say after, it's like an 8-inch screen. When you're in the field, you're trying to use that 8-inch screen to catch bad guys. Whereas if you have a 60-inch or 50-inch monitor, much easier, much better to take advantage of that technology. It's a quieter environment, and you can focus on other elements of police work rather than just flying the drone. It's a huge, great division of labor, as well as moving us to those next steps of getting it to the drone in the box capabilities.
Well, I think it's really smart, honestly, because you can only, I think there was a NASA study way back in the day. We always think of ourselves as great multitaskers, but they did a physiological kind of human machine interface study on astronauts, and they determined that nobody's good at multitasking. People that are really successful are the ones that can very sequentially and in a rapid manner, like do serial tasks, right? So in other words, you can't do two things at once very well, but if you can pivot from one thing to the next in a rapid manner, those are the people that are going to do well. And if you're flying a drone, to be thinking in your police hat of, evidence or, safety of the people on the ground, all of these things, it would be overwhelming, I would think, from a safety perspective too, all around, to have those people in the ops center. And by the way, that ops center can be like your command van that you had talked about from very early on. So It doesn't have to be a static, like what we saw in that picture with Santa Monica, some kind of a big ops center. It could be literally in the back of a van, or it could be somebody on an iPad, maybe 2 blocks over.
It could, and that's one of the things that we're seeing as we're rolling these out to different agencies, is that we're kind of saying that there's certain elements that are required within DFR, but the customization is really for each of these communities to make it based for how the agency wants to take advantage of it, how they want to best serve their community, and whether it's an example of like a Chula where they have 4 rooftops that they're launching to get 100% of their city, or a Beverly Hills that has 1 location, but then officers that are rolling with tactical drones that can deploy from the field. They're getting that same 100% coverage for the city with drones, but they're doing it in a different manner. And that's what we think is, we want everybody to take advantage of DFR. And it doesn't have to be so overwhelming that they have to figure this out themselves. We can come to them with those best practices. So rather than them having to do all of the research, we come and say, hey, here's 3 things. Choose one of the 3 things for your agency. What do you want to use it for?
Now, the Montgomery County Police DFR operations are a little bit newer, right? Because Chula was really the pioneer in all of this. So tell us a little bit about Montgomery County PD, and that's in Maryland. What you guys are doing with them there?
Yeah, so if you jump back to the picture, it ties into what you were saying, Dawn, about multitasking. They actually have two people in Montgomery County that work the air support officer role. They do that for multitasking. If you see all the screens, the person on the left is actually flying the drone, and they fly the drone in a safe area. The software that they use Axon Air Remote, and that protects them from, you can draw obstacles and landing zones and protected areas, so they can fly anywhere, and they can't go lower than a safe area and things like that, while the person on the right is actually watching, communicating with the police officers and patrol officers on the ground, watching other airspace, watching what they call CAD, computer aided dispatch. So they're doing things. So that roles, just to tie into what you had said, those roles, this is a great example. And Montgomery County has currently 2 locations. They're one of the larger, they're a large agency, and they're doing a terrific job. Did a lot of public outreach, and proud to call them a customer of ours. We have a lot of customers, but they've done a great job on the East Coast. And
yeah, this is super cool. I see a picture like that. It does take me back to my Air Force days, because honestly, in the Air Force, when we're doing, I'm not going to get into details on specific military operations, but who would also be standing there? The lawyer.
Yeah.
The JAG would be standing right next to those officers, especially if it was a high profile takedown or something that had been planned for a while that was going to for sure result in a court martial or trial, or depending on what it is in a combat situation. So yeah, just really amazing. The division of labor here, the complexity, and yet at the
and the results of it, which I think we have on the next slide, the results makes a big difference, which is pretty cool. Here's a Chula Vista.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is Chula Vista. So Chula Vista has 18,000 flights since their origin in 2019, I think it is. But the key items are with the arrows. There's lots of key statistics here, but the key one is first on scene. They're first on scene with the drone 75% of the time.
Wow.
That's unbelievable.
That is unbelievable. Just
Yeah,
the gas
stations
alone.
It's just a big city too. So one of the big advantages is that they're listening to 911 calls. So when something, you could hear it in their voices, live 911 is actually a product as a result of DFR. They invented live 911 to be able to support DFR. It's kind of funny. And then this is the reason they got there 75% of the time before patrol officers is that their response time on all calls is under 2 minutes.
That's
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
City, they're 54 square miles. As we've talked about, they've got 4 towers that cover the full city. So it's a lot of space that they're responsible for covering. And so to have a sub 2 minute is huge for an agency like that.
And this is what people, this is what city council looks at for statistics. This is really important to an agency, to the public, when they say, hey, you're not responding to my calls, and they can say, yeah, we're responding in under 2 minutes is unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
That's great. I'd love to talk to you offline whether these city prosecutors are trained on this technology and understanding it and how to enter that kind of evidence in court. So let's talk later. But we've got 1 minute left, and you guys have a lot going on, a lot coming up. In fact, I believe we'll get to see you in person at the Drone Responders annual UAS Summit, or I'm sorry, I'm butchering Charles Werner's title of his really cool event that's going to be in Williamsburg, Virginia, and the week of March 12th and 13th. I'm going to be there doing a stream. Looking forward to having you, I think, Barry, on that stream. Where else might people find you in person or get in touch with you if they want to learn more about Flying Lion?
Stephen.
I'll in April, I'll be at the Axon conference, Axon Accelerate, which is down in Miami. So we'll be there supporting our partner Axon and Axon Air. Barry, I think
There's a DFR program that's going on with Sarah and up in Canada that I'll be at. I'll also be at the Motorola function in a couple of months. And, you can always find me in Norway. It seems like I'm going there a lot.
I'm not sure a lot of folks will be flying here to there, but no, that's good to know. So, and what's a great way to reach you guys, by email or website or whatever you want to give?
More importantly, just go to Flying Lion Inc., INC, flyinglioninc.com. There's an online form. If you're thinking as an agency, you're thinking about implementing DFR, you think you want to do it, kind of want to get rough budget numbers, things like that, this is the time they're doing planning for next fiscal year. Usually starts July 1st. We're glad to talk with you. Just log in and we'll respond within 24 hours.
Well, awesome. And it sounds like you're also looking for OEM, original equipment manufacturer, software, other partners as well. So reach them that way. We are a little bit over time, so I wanted to thank you both for being on the show. I learned a ton. This was really exciting. Mark Ginug, by the way, from the Nevada test site, was in the chat earlier. Loved your video. So I wanted to give out a shout out to Mark. He's doing great stuff out there in that test site. Great to have you both on the show. It was a real honor and privilege. Can't wait to meet you in person. And everybody else, we are out here.